release me, let me go.
Greetings from Castle Goring, from Mickey and from me. Well, I have some rather delicious news depending on your taste. So without further ado, I am going to actually share it with you. I have had more than one little birdie whispering things in my ear recently. And I think I have indicated previously that all is not necessarily always well in the Garden of Eden, known as the Sussex residence in Montecito. Well, I don't think we want to crow, but those of us who actually value truth, integrity, justice, the British royal family, the British nation, the reputation of the British nation, I think might actually have cause to pause and smile, because I understand that Prince Harry and Mickey, Princess Meghan, come and console Mummy. Come on, come and console Mummy. Come on, come to Mummy. Come and console Mummy, because Princess Meghan, Mickey, the marriage is in big trouble. Big trouble. All those porky pies that they've been cooking up in Montecito have been actually sinking their ship. Oh, Mickey, is life unfair? Everybody's a racist. Can you believe it? Everybody's a racist, Mickey. Yes, everybody is a racist, because poor Meg. I beg you, please, don't exult in Meg's distress, because the guild is off the lily. As somebody said to me, and I'm going to be very careful what I say, and I'm going to say a very little, because on Thursday I am going to revisit this terrain in a different edifice. So I'm going to be careful what I say, because aside from anything else, if you say too much, you might end up giving clues as to who told you what. So one needs to be a little bit careful. But, you know, Meghan is not a double or a triple. She is a quadruple bluffer. She has been quadruple bluffing for so long that she's tied herself up into knots, the poor sweetie pie. Mickey, poor Meghan, she's tied herself up into knots. Can you believe it? Yes, she has. Yes, she has. Yes, she has. And all those porky pies, they've got caught by the sun, and they're stinking to high heaven. And they're causing problems in her marriage, because it's proven impossible for her to maintain the facade of sweet and loving and demure and innocent little victim who's never even left the flat, much less been around the block, and certainly not around the block the number of times anybody of her age and experience ought to have and would have. But of course she never has. No. She's just been like a wallflower. Yes, a picture of innocence. And she's needed the protection of a big strong man called has been, maybe, gonna, he can't be and never was, because he used to be a something, but now he's verging on being a no thing whatsoever. It's just terrible. Yes, Mix, it's just terrible. We have to grieve for her. Oh, gosh, the tangled webs that we weave when we set out to deceive. Oh, gosh. And then we end up getting caught up in the web of our own creation. Oh, Mickey is just too awful. It's called natural justice. It is. You know what I mean? It's just not a pretty sight, nevertheless. Not a pretty sight. I gather that Montecito is going to flood away with all the tears that are being shed. Oh, and she's such a victim. But the scales are falling off. Has and H's eyes. More than that I won't say at this point, except those of you who wish to exult, don't let me stop you. Toast in champagne, my dear. Toast it in champagne. Courtney Taylor says, "Hello, Lady C from Toronto. I really enjoy your videos and look forward to each and every one. Thank you very much. I'm reading in the news today that according to a new book just released by Christopher Anderson, the finger is now being pointed at Prince Charles as the senior member who questioned Harry's skin tone. Apparently he sat down for breakfast with Camilla on the morning the Narkles engagement was announced and commented that he wondered what the children's complexion would be." Let me stop you right there. Had he done so, and he did not, he's categorically denied it. But I'll get to that in a second. I'll resume that after, but I'm interrupting the question to make the point. Every single person speculates what a child is going to look like. This ridiculous nonsense that Meghan Markle, the professional victim, the perpetrator who's always playing victim, has come up with it needs to be shut down along with her. He wondered what the children's complexion would be. The book mentioned that his comments were blown out of proportion by royal staff and had become exaggerated by the time they reached the disastrous duo. I wonder how realistic this is. Very good question. For royal staff to be gossiping about a private and innocuous enough conversation Charles had with his wife at breakfast to the point that word of it reached the Narkles in a different household? Seems to me royal household staff would have more discretion. Not necessarily, darling, not necessarily. But in this instance, decidedly. Seems to me royal household staff would have more discretion. I'm just picking up back where I left off. Where is this Christopher Anderson getting his sources from? Clearly the servants, if he's quoting them. Perhaps trying to distract from a certain upcoming court case? Or is this a complete fabrication, as Charles's camp is saying? Can't wait to hear your thoughts and comments on the allegations in this new book. Well, first of all, Prince Charles has categorically denied the claims. The royals don't often deny things. So I think we can give him the benefit of the doubt right there. He has categorically denied it. You know, good luck to Mr. Anderson. I've never heard of him. I gather he's quite a successful author and has written some very successful books. Well, as I say, I've never heard of him. He certainly doesn't move in the circles I move in. He certainly doesn't move in any circles that anybody that I know would have access to the royal family would move in. he's got good enough sources to have come up with this rather entertaining story. And it could have happened. The fact is, it didn't happen. And to give Mr. Anderson his due, he has made it absolutely clear that Charles's comments were twisted. But you know, palace staff are notoriously unreliable sources. Notoriously unreliable. And when I say palace staff, I mean staff, S-T-A-F-F. I don't mean courtiers. You know, they have been notorious throughout the ages for going behind sheds and getting 50 and £100 for a little tidbit here and a little tidbit here. And half the time the tidbits are rotten food or rubbish. Well, if that's what he's relying on, good luck to him. Having said that, he's got his book attention, and I'm not going to, as a fellow author, rubbish the fact that he has got some good publicity. Good luck to him. The fact of the matter is, as anybody who's ever listened to what I've had to say should know, is most royal books are utter rubbish. Most royal writers speak from the orifice upon which I am sitting. Look at the content of most royal books. Nothing stands up for any length of time. I just say that for what it's worth. The reality is, and if you want to refer to a book that has stood the test of time, go to Meghan and Harry, the real story. I'm not tooting my horn, I'm making a statement of fact. Read what the royal family's reaction was. Read what their pros and cons were where the marriage was concerned. One of the main positives that Meghan had going for her from the word go was the colour of her skin. Nobody realised that she was quite the disturbing and disturbed being that she has turned out to be. Oh, they knew she was a hard nut to crack and rarely an operator of the highest order. But you can be an operator and still sort of function within the realms of reality and decency, neither of which, it has to be said, she concerns herself with. So, the colour of her skin, though, from the word go, was the one thing she had going in her favour. She used it and has continued to use it mercilessly against everybody with whom it was a positive. Not only the royal family, the British people. I am disgusted by this woman and her antics, and the fact that she can play the race card in the detrimental and disgusting way that she has been playing it and continues to play it, so that she'll be a victim. Oh, I'm such a victim. I'm so demure and I'm so helpless. Helpless, just like Uncle Adolf. Just helpless. I mean, you couldn't make it up. Also, what all of you may not realise is the head of Prince Philip's family, the Mountbattens, his first cousin, who was the head of the Mountbatten family, David Milford Haven, was himself mixed race. His mother, Nada, was the product of a mixed race union. Her mother was Countess Sophie von Merenberg, who was made Countess Torby upon her marriage to Grand Duke Michael of Russia. She was a descendant of Pushkin. Pushkin is a declared and recognized and has always been descendant of a Chadian slave, black as the ace of spades, called Hannibal. Mixed race. It's no phenomenon in the Mountbatten family. They are themselves mixed race. Let's not even get to the fact that the Queen's some few times great-grandmother, Charlotte of Mecklenburg-Strelitz, is also mixed race, as was another one of her ancestors, Philippa of Hainault, as they say in England. Let's stick to what they say in England, even though it's wildly incorrect. Does this begin to clear up the mystery and make you realise how totally farcical it is? 100 years ago, when Sophie Merenberg married Grand Duke Michael, and I know this from members of the imperial family, they did speculate as to whether the children would end up looking as if they had African heritage. Perfectly reasonable speculation. Just as how it would have been a perfectly reasonable speculation for Charles to indulge in, except he didn't. I think this is a story that is going to run and run in a great many variations. It has been set up by Meghan, so sweet and innocent. Now that my marriage is suffering, I suppose everybody's going to hate me even more than they do, and I'm such a good person, such a good person. One act of compassion at a time. One act of compassion at a time. No, I'm not going to write Uncle Mike, and I'm not going to write about Uncle Mike, and I'm not going to write Aunt Pam about Uncle JJ. Why should I? I mean, who are they? They're just my uncles. They're dead. But I had to rush back from England to console me when Uncle Mike died. But I couldn't stretch to writing a note to anybody, nor could I even bother to send a wreath. My goodness, can you imagine such integrity? I had to focus on my own pain, and I had to have H there holding my hand, one teardrop of compassion at a time. Another point to be made is that the Romanovs were not particularly racist either, because Prince Felix Yusupov, who Tsar Nicholas II gave his permission for his niece Irina of Russia to marry, was from a family that was originally Muslim and Tatar. Caucasian, but decidedly dark-skinned. Not even Christian, originally. How does that stack up with being racist? Just make the point for what it's worth. Truth Seeker says, Lady C, the Mail has reported as new as a revelation, new and revelation are in big block capitals, that Sergeant Alan Peters, Princess Diana's former police bodyguard, has now gone on record stating that she was the first to cheat. And that's the reason Prince Charles went back to Camilla. Am I falsely remembering things? Or did you state the same thing 30 big block capitals years ago and they trashed big block capitals? You at this time for saying so. Can you please explain what's up? Well, I'm also the one who revealed that Diana, Princess of Wales, was mixed race and had Indian blood. And at the time, everybody thought I was barking. And then, 25 years later, what happens? Prince William gives his DNA. It's on the front pages of the Times of India as a revelation, even though it was in my book 25 years before. And yes, when I said that Diana had stepped out first and that she had done so with Barry Mannakee, I was roundly abused. I was accused of everything that bore no relationship whatsoever to the facts. The only person who has ever apologized to me from the press for the way I was treated by the press was Richard Madeley on Good Morning Britain when he used to front it. I say that for what it's worth because it shows at least one journalist had the decency and the ethics to actually say mea culpa. Well, what's up? I suspect that the time, now that the Queen is getting older and Charles is standing a greater chance of acceding to the throne sooner rather than later, those who have buried the truth and have done so mischievously for the last 30 years, usually so that they could make money, but occasionally so that they could enhance their own prestige and actually earning ability, so it all comes back to money, are beginning to see that maybe their bread should have been buttered on another side. I think a lot of it is self-interest. That's my cynical take. And if I'm wrong, what can I tell you? I don't think I'm wrong. It has been my experience that those who speak the truth are sometimes like animals baying in the night, with all the neighbours screaming to shut up. The neighbours, of course, being the media. Colonial Girl says, Lady C, Princess Charlene of Monaco is Tatler's cover girl for January 2021. Is this unfortunate timing? I've read your autobiography and know the struggles you had with swallowing as a result of the tremendous stress you were subjected to as a youth. Princess Charlene of Monaco allegedly has been having similar struggles. Do you think her problems are stress-related, and is it true that she hasn't been able to eat any solids for months? Well, as you know, I have more or less avoided the subject of Princess Charlene of Monaco, except on one occasion a few months ago, to make the point that no, it wasn't marital trouble that was keeping her in South Africa. It was serious health problems because she had a terrible nasal ENT infection, which is extremely dangerous because it can go straight to the brain. I know a certain amount about what is going on because we have friends in common. I also know that the marriage is not in trouble because of this, that all that speculation has nothing whatsoever to do with it. And I have to tell you, as somebody who for years, every time I tried to swallow, my throat would seal, there is nothing more distressing than when you are literally dying of hunger, literally, and every time you try to eat, your throat seals. It's not anorexia nervosa, because you don't have a distorted body image. You're not trying to make yourself thin. You are trying to eat, and every time you try to eat, your throat seals. The throat is a very interesting organ. If it is subjected to enough strain and pressure, it will automatically, involuntarily seal. That's how Joan Rivers died. That's why she died. They were playing around with her throat, and her throat sealed, and they couldn't oxygenize her quickly enough. It is an involuntary reflex that the human body has in reaction to certain stimuli. Princess Charlene's problems have arisen because of scarring as a result of the surgeries and the damage that has been done to her by the infection. I can tell you, as somebody who has lived through this, and I know very few people who have. In fact, I don't know anybody else who has. I know people who've been anorexic, but that's not the same thing. Because they don't want to eat. They avoid eating. They avoid swallowing. This is when you want to eat and can't. It is awful. You end up being so debilitated, and she has lost half her body weight. I ended up weighing 89 pounds at 5'6". That's not funny. You are so weak, you can barely function. You are lightheaded from hunger. It plays havoc with the whole of your being. And if you're not mentally ill, believe me, you experience every bit of the pain psychologically, with nothing to preserve you from the consequences of it. It's not a pretty picture. And I think she and the whole of her family deserve a tremendous amount of understanding and compassion. And my hope is that they can cure it. And for what it's worth, there is a way around it. It's not a very good solution, but it's a solution. When my brother-in-law, who's a wonderful doctor, as well as a really nice guy, realized what was going on with me, he said to me, "Eat ice cream." He said, don't worry about nutrients. Eat ice cream. Ice cream is the one thing that slithers down, and your throat won't seal. And it took from the time I was 20 till I was in my mid-30s for the problem to be solved. Terrible, 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 terrible ordeal for anybody to have to go through. And I only hope that whatever the damage is that has been done to her, that it will be reversible and she will be able to ultimately swallow. I hope I've cleared it up. There's really nothing more to be said. It is just awful. Christine Wilson says, Dear Lady C, I would like to ask you a question. When Harker was supposedly heavily pregnant, she squatted down with her legs and knees together. But when she was told to squat on, obviously, the Ellen DeGeneres show, she squatted with her legs and knees wide apart. Well, I'm sure, my dear, practice makes perfect. Do you think this is another thing that makes Harkle special and different from other women? Thank you for your input. It is great. Well, there is no doubt that Meghan is very special. She is unique because it is unheard of for a woman who's 8 months pregnant to be able to squat the way she did in 5-inch heels, although heels actually do make it easier for you to squat. However, 5-inch heels when you're 8 months pregnant and not waddling, in fact, gliding like a swan. And then you just deflate yourself down onto floor level and then bounce right up back. Unique physical attributes. So do I think this is what makes her special? I think it certainly is, because I've never heard of another woman who was 8 months pregnant who was able to squat like that so easily and with her knees tightly shut. Where did the baby go? I wonder. Maybe the stork took it somewhere for the few seconds that she was on the ground. Meghan is so special and so marvellous and so wonderful that she not only defies the laws of gravity, but the laws of physics. Mass usually moves into vacuum. But in this case, mass was moving into bone. Oof. And there was no problem with mass being absorbed by bone. Alexis Keary says, Lady C, emergency. Oh, what's that? I just heard on a British radio programme that if Charles dies before the Queen, then William will not be in line for the throne. Oh, I don't think so, sweetie pie. The throne will pass to Andrew after the Queen dies, and then to Beatrice. Is this true? If Andrew becomes king, that would mean the end of the monarchy in Britain. Everybody pray for the health of Prince Charles. Alexis Keary, have no fear. The line of succession is very clearly established by precedent and by law. It is the eldest child nowadays and their eldest child. If Prince Charles should die, Prince William moves up a slot. Prince Andrew doesn't move sideways. Prince Andrew has gone way down. The phenomenon that happened with Prince Andrew is what happened with Harry as well. Number 2 ends up at number 6, then number 16, then number 60 at some point, if he lives long enough, and everybody else is fecund enough. There is no possibility of Prince Andrew acceding to the throne and leapfrogging over anybody. So I rest my case on that, and hopefully you will rest your head with ease, having heard that. Jamie, lovely day vegan. I don't believe it. Oh, what a name. Hello, Lady C. As always, I'm loving your videos. Thank you, Jamie, lovely day vegan, with your wonderful name. It occurred to me the other day when hearing on the grapevine that the royal family have prevented the BBC from filming their important and upcoming royal events, and that they have no choice now than to turn to ITV for this booking instead. I find this slightly worrying because to an onlooker such as myself, ITV are just as disgusting and disingenuous. Plus anti-monarchists themselves. You only have to look back at the saga involving Piers Morgan and watch how they deliver the royal news, that it is blatantly obvious that ITV and the BBC are both anti-monarchist in big block capitals. So my question is this: can the royal family survive without being heavily reliant on these 2 TV channels televising them? As the Queen once said, you have to be seen to be believed, and without a TV channel to fill them, their visibility would dwindle. That's a very good question and a very good observation, but I think it would have been a greater problem 3 or 5 years ago than it is at the moment, because the reality is both ITV and BBC have been losing viewers, and their viewing figures have been going down like sinking stones. I mean, I practically never look at either of them, and I know nobody who does. There are now many media outlets. All the royal family needs to do is have its own YouTube channel. All it needs to do is be out there on social media. It will get its point across. And you see, guess who showed them the way? Meghan and Harry. Because Meghan and Harry figured out that they didn't need the media. Because if they could work their way around the press, they would be fine. They, of course, have ITV and BBC firmly in their pockets because they are all of a similar persuasion in many ways, including lack of scruple, I would say. The royal family really do not need ITV and BBC the way they used to. ITV and BBC are quickly making themselves irrelevant. The royal family will not need them. because people will get their news from other sources. They are already doing it. They are not slitting the royal family's throat. They are slitting their own throats. I hope that answers the question, and I hope I'm not wrong. Time will tell, but I suspect that I am right, because we live in a very interesting and fast-moving age, thanks to the internet, and thanks to all different sorts of information to which we were not privy previously and now are. And that's why Meghan and Harry and people like them are so desperate to get control of the rest of the media and to get control of the internet, to shut it down so that they will have tight control of all the sources of information. But I don't think it's going to happen. Francesca de Rimini says, let's face it, the powers that be are trying to destroy the British royal family and bring about a republic. That is true where a lot of the powers that be are concerned, because we live in a world where people are too dumb to realize that constitutional monarchy is the great preserver of people's liberties. Or to put it another way, they're not interested in preserving anybody's liberties. They are interested in gathering a certain category of person is interested in gathering power for themselves. And so they don't really want a royal family which is going to be representing all the people. They want to be in the driving seat, to be able to control the masses. And we are the masses, and we are supposed to do what they want. Communism did it, and this is a variation on it. Other totalitarian states have done it as well, without being communist. To continue the question, the problem is now overt and Machiavellian. It has become against those British who want it. It was the BBC behind the Bashir interview that caused Charles and Diana to divorce. Well, in fairness to them, Diana wanted a divorce. So in fairness, but that was the immediate catalyst. Yes, it was. Could the powers behind the BBC have played a part in killing her? With Diana as queen, Britain would have been a harder time becoming a republic. Maybe. I say this because the narrative out there is that the men behind the royal family killed Diana. Well, they certainly didn't. The Queen is old and now is in a strategic time to get rid of the royal family. Charles is not as popular and has been labelled a racist, along maybe with his son William. Kate made Harry's wife cry first. We all know this is a setup, but could it be possible that the powers wanting to get rid of the royal family got rid of Diana? I know this is a squirrel hole, but after everything I have observed of a nobody like Meghan having connections backing her, I wonder. Well, Francesca de Rimini, what you say is very interesting, because it is as valid an interpretation that the BBC set up Diana and caused her death as it is. In fact, it is a more valid hypothesis than to say that the royal family did, or that indeed any other entity did, except, of course, her negligence in failing to put on her seatbelt. It's a very, very acute and actually interesting observation. I'm not a great conspiracy theorist, and your hypothesis is extremely Machiavellian. But as we have seen with Meghan and others of that ilk, they are extremely Machiavellian. So, do I think that they set her up for death? I'm not sure they did it advertently, but they certainly did it inadvertently, because they helped to drive her over the edge into absolute paranoia, and she was already paranoid. They knew she was paranoid. That's what they played upon. Wicked, evil, disgusting, irresponsible. Is that the worthy conduct of our national broadcaster? Clearly not. Jamaica calling. Lady C, now that Barbados has cancelled the Queen and become a republic, what are your thoughts as a Jamaican about the Republican movement here to replace her as head of state with the president? Well, I think that's a very interesting question, and I'm going to give you my answer as if I were in Jamaica and as if I did not have the benefit of knowing, to the extent that I do, how helpful and useful the royal family can be. I think whether Jamaica is a republic or a monarchy, as long as it is still a part of the British Commonwealth, the historic and, to an extent, cultural links are maintained. It doesn't really matter, in my view, whether Jamaica remains a monarchy or not. I suspect ultimately it will become a republic, because I think there are enough people in Jamaica who have the view, whether rightly or wrongly is beside the point, that Jamaica is its own country and it needs its own head of state. And I think that there is a tremendous amount of misinformation and miseducation where our history is concerned. But ultimately, I think severing the monarchic connection with Britain isn't going to make a scrap of difference to Jamaica or to the British monarchy. I think what would make the difference would be if we left or were booted out of the Commonwealth. And I don't see that happening any time soon. I hope that answers the question. I will also say, as a rider to all of this, as long as Jamaica remains a monarchy, and as long as the ultimate court of appeal is the House of Lords, which it used to be. I forget whatever name they use nowadays. I'm not interested in it. It was the House of Lords. And because they've been changing names here as well, rather sillily updating things like they need updating, you know, sort of, let's tinker with the deck chairs. Let's tinker with the deck chairs. Nobody's going to care about the fact that maybe we should be down by the swimming pool actually getting a tan and having fun. Jamaica's judicial system profits from the monarchic link. I know only too well, because my brother was Bob Marley's family's lawyer throughout all of the trouble and strife with the Bob Marley estate as it trundled through the various departments up to the House of Lords for the matter to be resolved. And there was no doubt that it was done honourably, correctly, properly, honestly, and in such a way that everybody could have confidence in the outcome. How sure are Jamaicans going to be when the final court of appeal is in Jamaica? I just make that point for what it's worth. So far, Jamaica's judiciary is supposedly fairly clean. Will it remain so? Because I have to tell you, an awful lot of former colonies that started out with good judiciaries have ended up with very odoriferous replicates. And on that note, I will say thank you very much for listening. I hope this has been of some interest to you. If it has, please like, share, subscribe, press the notification bell, and remember, please keep the questions coming in. This can't be done without you. Thank you and God bless. Bye-bye.